Welcome to another exciting episode of the Forward Live podcast. And I'm just making sure, just checking my sound, making sure that you guys can hear me. And I want to wish a happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms out there. I didn't broadcast on Mother's Day. I devoted Mother's Day to my beloved wife, the mother of my sons. So did that, and then we're back in the saddle this week. And again, the theme of this podcast for this year, at least, is, is solutions to everyday life issues. Because if it isn't helpful, it isn't helpful, right? So good morning to everybody that's watching live, and I will address the comments at the end of the show. If you're watching via YouTube, please click subscribe and click the bell so that you get alerts and notifications when we go live. And if you're watching via Facebook Live, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with everyone because I really believe that this is helpful stuff. Not because I said it, but because it actually works. Because that's the whole thing. The idea is in life is to be effective, because if you're effective you're impactful, and if you're impactful then you're presenting something that actually adds value to people's lives, and that's really important to me. So this week I want to talk about self. And it's funny because self, I think, is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts in humanity, because when you think of self, some people think of selfishness. In other words, hoarding or um, protecting or trying to segment off for themselves, for their own good, or thinking of themselves above others. And I really believe that even selfishness is not a bad concept, because the idea is really, think about this. The only thing that you are absolutely certain of is yourself. Everything else varies between conceptual to abstract to concrete, but even that which is concrete, you really don't. In other words, you might observe a person and you might think you know them, but you really don't. And but you know yourself. This is funny because, and what's interesting about this is that people say, well, you need to learn to know yourself. I think everyone at a certain level knows themselves. I don't think that self knowledge is the issue. I think that self awareness is, because you will know things like, for example, me. I'll talk about me. I am a procrastinator. I'll put things off. And I know this about myself, but if I'm not aware of what I know, in other words, if I'm not willing to act on what I know, then it's pretty pointless. So this self-awareness is really important to expressing your self-knowledge or making the most of your self-knowledge. Because see, again, because I know that I tend to procrastinate, I have to put things, I have to rearrange things as if um, they are due sooner than they actually are. And that helps to keep me on schedule. So I have to engage in a little bit of mind fuck on myself to trick myself into doing things in a timely manner. But that's self-awareness because I know what my problem is. I hope that that all makes sense to you. But the other thing too is the whole thing about thinking higher of yourself than you do of others. Listen, I'm going to say something very candidly. I think more highly of myself than I do any other person. That's right. And it's not to try to say that I think that I'm better than anyone else. I just think of myself more highly because at the end of the day, if I'm going to add value to anyone's life, I need to make sure that I'm okay. I need to make sure that my needs are met. I need to make sure that I'm breathing. I need to make sure that I'm healthy. I need to make sure that I'm strong. I need to make sure that I'm wealthy because if I'm not, I'm no good to anyone else. There's no way I can help someone from a posture of lack, a posture of sickness, a posture of weakness. I'm no good to anyone. So what I do is I make sure that I'm okay. I look after me. Now, once I know I do a self check, and if you get in your car, you'll notice that when you turn your key to the on position before you actually turn it to the spring loaded position for the ignition, or if you have a button in your car, when you push the button, all the lights come on. That's called a self check, and basically your car is going through a diagnostic to find out whether or not all of the systems are go. Because if there's anything amiss, then it will throw a code which will light a light on your dashboard or give you some kind of message on your information center and say, okay, there is something wrong with me. And you have to do something similar. You have to do a self check on yourself before you do anything. You have to filter what you're doing through your capability. And if you don't, then what'll happen is you'll overextend yourself and you'll wind up doing harm to yourself in the process of trying to help someone else. Now, speaking of filters or lenses, I want to talk about this because this is really important. People who are self-aware don't hurt other people. People who are truly self-conscious don't hurt other people. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when you are self aware, when you are self conscious, you think about, will my words, will my thoughts, will my actions harm anyone else? You will filter what you're thinking, saying, and doing through that lens, whether or not it is harmful. And it takes a measure of self-awareness, of self-consciousness to actually process that. Because if you have no sense of self, you don't know what is harmful to you, and consequently, you will go out and harm others because you have no understanding of what is harmful to you. See, the thing is that when you love, that is, have empathy and compassion for others, you filter things through the lens of, what is the impact of this on the object of my action. And if you're self-aware and self-conscious, You don't harm. And this is really important because when you look at people who do crime, particularly crime that actually harms people, you know, violent crime, that sort of thing. These people typically don't have a well-developed sense of self. Basically, they m- most of these people have been harmed in some way in their lives, and in the course of their being harmed, they develop layers of protection, or things that actually numb the pain, and so they're no longer aware of what hurts them, and then they turn around and hurt others. And this is why it's important for everybody to really get a sense of self-healing, because if you know that you're damaged goods, if you know that you've been broken, if you know that you've been harmed, you need to get healed of that. Because if you don't get healed from it, what happens is that you develop layer after layer of callus over that hurt. And what happens is that you are no longer aware or conscious of the hurt. And now you go out and repeat it because you are no longer aware, you're no longer conscious of it. You're no longer you don't feel the pain. So you think that when you do this that you're not actually inflicting pain. In other words, you're reacting without understanding the consequence. One of the other things that we have to do is we have to stop beating ourselves up over what we do wrong. See, this is another part of healing, because once you get to self healing, you cease to be self abasing or self deprecating. You stop saying harmful things about yourself. This is really interesting because there is a tendency today to just kind of spout off and say harmful things. And these harmful things come about because you're not aware, and because you're not aware, what happens is that you begin to think less of yourself, and you begin to speak less of yourself. When and I'm going to say something here, that religion is a key player in self-deprecation. Why? Because it postulates that you are wretched, that you are worthless, that you are dirty, you are filthy, there is no good thing that dwells in your flesh, blah, 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 blah. And what happens is you begin to internalize this, and you begin to say these things about yourself. And let me tell you this, that the most credible voice that you will ever hear is your own. Someone can say something to you and you'll hear it with your outer ear. But if you take that and you process that, if you internalize that, if you give life to it, then what happens is it becomes something that you repeat, you regurgitate. This is the thing, like the word meditate has the same etymological root as ruminate. And when a cow or a bovine ruminates, it basically is processing food through multiple digestive chambers. So basically, it takes the food in, processes it through one digestive chamber, regurgitates it and chews it as cud, and keeps doing that until it's completely processed and diffused in the system. Why is that important? Because when you hear something, you have the choice. Your ears are a gateway into your psyche. And if you allow the gate to open to something negative, you will begin to internalize and process that. And the risk is that you will begin to absorb that and accept it. And once you accept it, now you begin to repeat it. And the voice that is saying the negative thing about you now is not someone externally, but it is you. And what happens is when you speak it, you hear it with your inner ear. And that voice is the most credible voice that you hear. There is no more credible voice that you will ever hear than your own. I can't stress that enough. And this is why self-consciousness and even selfishness is important, because if you don't get this, you will begin to beat yourself up, put yourself down. And and here's the thing, we all make mistakes. Let me say that again. We all make mistakes. Better yet, let me say it a little harsher so that it really resonates with you. We all fuck up. Okay? We all fuck up. The question is, what do you do when you fuck up? Because you can dwell on that mistake, internalize that mistake, and begin to self abase or self deprecate yourself based on that mistake. And when you do that over and over and over again, what you do is you're never healing from it. You're never getting past it. What you're doing now is you are setting yourself up for a pattern of negative repetition. This mistake now, because you beat yourself up about it, you set the tempo for your own self-esteem, and you create a pattern of beating yourself up over your mistakes. And so what happens is you get into a tailspin of mistake after mistake after mistake, and you keep beating yourself up. And what you wind up doing is totally devaluating yourself to your asymptotically approaching zero. In other words, and look this up, the word asymptote. Basically, it says that as something approaches zero, it never quite reaches zero, but it gets closer and closer and closer. This is what we often refer to as hair splitting. How many ways can you split the hair? Because it is finite, but you just keep splitting and splitting and splitting until you you follow. So look up asymptote, and that's a that will actually help. That term, understanding that term, will help you grow intellectually. um, but what happens is we keep devaluating ourselves until we're down to nothing. We absolutely assign no value to ourselves. And when you assign no value to yourself, how can you be of value to anyone else? I mean, think about it. If you yourself see yourself as valueless, how can you realistically be a value add to anyone else? And at some point, you have to break the cycle. At some point, you have to pull up out of this. You have to pull back on the stick and get the bird back in the air, right? Because if you don't, if you keep going in this tailspin, eventually you crash. And at that point, things begin to fall apart in your life because essentially you've undergone uh, the metaphorical equivalent of crashing a plane into the ground. So you pull back on the stick of your life and get the plane back in the air, and understand that I am not a liar. I am not a cheater. I am not a thief. I am not um lazy. I'm not a bigot. I'm not. Basically, you have to address these things and start speaking positivity to yourself. You have to change the trajectory of your life with the words that you speak, with the thoughts that you think. You have to change this. Only you can fix this. So many times, like I said, we all fuck up. The question is, do we allow ourselves to remain in fuckery, or do we move on? And that's the key. So now what you do is you figure out, okay, what is it that went wrong? Why did it go wrong? How do I address it? Who do I need to contact? What resources do I need? How long is this going to take? You start doing some creative analysis of it, and then you fix it. You move forward, and then you begin to start speaking life to yourself. You start telling yourself that this was a moment in time in your life. This was an occurrence in your life, but not the definition of your life. And that's really key. And if you do that, you turn it around. So this whole thing, it really tickles me when people talk about selfishness. They'll say, "Oh, well, you're selfish." You know, no, I'm not selfish. Well, actually, I am. Let me own that. And you should be too. You should be reasonably selfish. Because again, if you are not taking care of you, if you are not amassing things for yourself, if you are not building wealth for yourself, if you're not building a knowledge base for yourself, if you're not building a network for yourself, then you absolutely cannot help anyone else. Honestly, you have to be in a position of being well equipped in order to suitably equip anyone else. And watch this, whether you choose to be or not, you are a mentor, a guide, or a pattern for someone else. There is somebody watching you. Somebody, you are someone's mentor, whether you want to be or not. And people will watch you and make decisions about their lives based on what you do. So to go back to something Aaron Tomlinson and I have said on Freology Friday, we say this, we did an entire episode on it, and I encourage you to go back and look at it. But we say this all the time, that it's not enough to just be yourself. Being yourself is not good if at this particular point in time you're an asshole. If you're a dick, right? You are not your best authentic self. See, that's the key. You want to be authentic. You want to be true to who you are, but at the same time, you want to be the best version of that. And what is the best version of that? The best version of that is the one that speaks well about yourself, that has a good understanding of self, that can radiate that to others, so that you are sending out a vibe of helpfulness, a vibe of edification. a vibe of life that you want to send that to others. There's a true story that the human heart, has an electromagnetic field that basically radiates in a 6-foot diameter around the human body. You ever meet someone and you say, I dig their vibe? That's because their electromagnetic field has meshed with your electromagnetic field, and they are on the same frequency or close to the same frequency. So the vibe, and this is real talk, you like the vibe. Ever have someone walk into a room and that their presence changes the atmosphere of the room? People say, "Man, what kind of cologne is that?" Or, "Man, did the temperature change?" Or, "Wow, suddenly it feels lively in here," because somebody walked in that had a complete awareness of self. Man, this is really, really powerful stuff. And if you get this, you'll understand that you are unique, you are powerful, you have something to offer to humanity. And here's the thing, most of all, be kind to yourself. I'm going to give an analogy. I just bought a new car, and this is and I don't really talk about the kind of car that I drive and all of that. People who know me well, they know what I have, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to entertain guesses or anything like that, but I will say this is that there is a function in the center console of the car that when you close it, it has a magnetic catch, and all you have to do is just push it until the magnet catches, right? But what happens is that people think that it's one of those spring catches, like where you have to click it down in order for it to catch, and it's not. You just touch it, and the magnet catches it. And what happens is that if you keep pushing on it, a message will come up on the display saying, "Close the lid gently." In other words, if you abuse this thing, it'll break. And this is just a part of the center console. I just think it's so cool that this car talks about that, right? Y- you you have to look at not just look at the what you think are the important parts of your life, but some of the less significant or insignificant parts of your life, and be kind to yourself about that. Be gentle with yourself. You are precious. I mean, listen. When we think about precious things, when we think about gems, jewelry, and things like that, or we think about precise electronics or mechanical devices, we handle with care because we know that if we are ham-fisted and rough with these things, that we can upset the delicate balance of their functionality. And if you are rough with yourself, you will harm yourself. And if you harm yourself, you in turn will harm others. And this is not a if, or it is a when. You will harm others. So that's what I have today. I'm going to take the link from from the show, and I'm going to put it in the chat. And if you are so inclined, you may join in and share your thoughts with everyone else, because I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. And if you don't want to come on, that's cool. Just put your thoughts in the comments, and we'll we'll talk about it. And the other thing too is that if there are any topics that you think that you'd like to see covered on the Forward podcast, please put them in the comments or send me a private message, and I will address them. Okay, so that's the thing. So now The um, the link is in the chat. And if you are interested and want to join in on the conversation, you want to put your pretty face in the show, you can do that. So I'll give everyone a minute, give you a chance to join in. I tell you, one of the things that this was an interesting thing for me is that when I was in ministry, in Christian ministry, and I made the decision to leave ministry, people were like, "Well, what are you going to do now?" Kind of thing. And my thing is, well, I'll do whatever I'm equipped to do, whatever I'm good at, whatever I want to do. Um, Ministry doesn't define me. Matter of fact, I grew up in Detroit. I'm the child of a single mother raising three kids in the inner city. That that is an experience, but that doesn't define me. I'm a Navy veteran. That was an experience, but that doesn't define me. I was an athlete. I was a martial artist. These are experiences. They don't define me. In other words, I am secure in myself irrespective of my experiences. And I've had great experiences and I've had horrible experiences. In 1994, I had to bury my wife at the time. She died. Um, and that was a hard thing. I mean, that's something I wouldn't even wish on somebody I don't like. But again, it was an experience, but it didn't define me. Don't let the moral of the story there, folks, is don't let your experiences define you. And most of all, don't let other people define you, because here's the other thing too, is that people want to conform you to an image. They want to conform you to a set of parameters that are comfortable for them. And so they develop an expectation of you based on those parameters. And what you have to do is you have to make sure that you establish that you are not to be defined by someone else's parameters of you, someone else's impression of you, because that's the whole thing about, and I very rarely talk about the Bible, but here I'm going to talk about it. It says to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, that if you can let people conform you into an image, mold you into something that they want you to be or what they think you should be. But transformation is when you understand yourself, when you understand your own self-worth, your own self-value, and you are sufficiently selfish that you are able to transform beyond the conformity that is tried to be placed upon you. And that's really powerful stuff. But so it looks like, so let's go through the comments too, because we had some really good comments. I was watching them go through here. William, good morning. C. Rodriguez, good morning. Always good to see you. My brother Jermaine Thomas, good to see you. Jackie Ruffin, my sister, my sister in love. It's so good to see you. I hope you're still here so that you can hear that. But I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. You are an amazing human being. C. Rodriguez says, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." God, that is goddamn truth right there. That absolutely is. Ben Urban says, "Self-deprecation is a slippery slope to self-destruction." You are absolutely right, and William Albert agrees. He said, "True, Ben, in my experience." And Ben says our sphere of influence begins with us. In other words, if you can't influence anyone else, if you can't influence yourself, how can you think about this? How can you convince someone when you are not fully persuaded of your own thought? C. Rodriguez says, chart your own course, travel your own path. I am my own priority. That's right. William says, I am responsible. And then Ben says, each one of us must maintain a healthy balance of selfishness and selflessness. That, Ben, is really, really key. But here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of selflessness at all because selflessness says I must die to self. I must lose myself. I honestly I don't get into selflessness anymore. It's like that basically I'm trying to manage to what degree I'm selfish and to what degree I am giving, lending of myself. Um, C. Rodriguez says, I choose me. And she says, be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself. Perry Mendelter says, yes, be kind to yourself. And C. Rodriguez says, be the love that you deserve. My sister, you are on fire today. Absolutely. And Ben says the last thing that any one of us needs is to subject ourselves to psychic vampirism. That is so true. Don't let people suck the life out of you. Ben is such a wise soul. If you guys aren't following Ben Urban on Facebook, and you should be, you should be following Ben and his wife Beth. These are two extraordinary people, two extraordinary human beings. They've been a tremendous blessing in my life. So it looks like nobody's going to join in. So I'm going to go and hop in the car and go for a drive on autopilot. So anyway, I hope that you guys have an awesome week, and remember, be true to yourself, to thine own self. Be true to yourself. Be good to yourself. Okay, and also remember, don't forget to check out the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, where I'm joined by Keith Giles, Matthew DiStefano, and Katie Valentine. Also, make sure you check out Freeology Fridays every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, and 4 p.m. Pacific. Make sure that you check that out. And Aaron and I, we have we've been inviting guests on. Yesterday or day before yesterday, we have my son Derrick the second, aka Ducey, on, and it was an absolutely fantastic show. And because my son is wise beyond his years, and that's not because he's my son, just because you know he's just an amazing human being in his own right. So but we're having guests, and we're thinking of all kinds of creative things. We've been inviting people to join in on the show. On Friday we had Ben Urban, and we had Carl Forham that joined in, and so it's really exciting. Jermaine Thomas has joined in before, and we have really a fantastic time. And also be sure to check out my column, Love Minus Religion, on pathos.com. There'll be new content this week. Last week, I kind of took the week off because it was Mother's Day and I had a lot of stuff to do work wise, but I'm going to put some new content out there that you absolutely will love. And make sure, again, that you like, subscribe, share, put this out there. Get it in as many hands as you can, because this is helpful. Not because I'm doing it, but because it works. I'm telling you that these are principles. Everything that I've talked about in 2022 so far have been things that I have absolutely put into service in my life, and they are effective. So until the next time, may you be happy, may you be well, and may you be filled with peace. Talk to you later.